Hi, I'm Paul Comfort, and on this edition of Transit Unplugged, we speak with Mark Joseph, the Global Chief Development Officer and former CEO of Transdev, the largest contract transportation company in North America and one of the largest in the world. We talk about big data's role in transit, the role of autonomous shuttles in transit, and Transdev's vision of personalized, autonomous, connected, and electric transit for our nation and the world. All that on this edition of Transit Unplugged.
What does it mean to be a successful public transit agency? What are you doing to lead the way? It's time to learn from the top transit professionals in North America. This is Transit Unplugged with your host, Paul Comfort.
Hi, I'm Paul Comfort, and today we have with us as our guest on Transit Unplugged, Mark Joseph, a good friend of mine and currently the Global Chief Development Officer for Transdev, former CEO of Transdev. Has a long background in history. Mark, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it.
So, Mark, tell us a little bit. I always like to start the show with having folks tell us about their background. You've got a background that goes way back in transit. You and I used to work together. You recruited me many years ago when I was just a kid. And tell me about your background and history.
Paul, that was one of my better decisions to recruit you. I started out in what was originally a taxi company. The company was founded in 1909, so this company is well more than 100 years old. We saw through in this great history of this company that started as Yellow Cab of Baltimore and then later Yellow Transportation. We survived the Great Depression, 2 world wars, the big recession, and a number of other challenges. And the most recent has been surviving Uber. Mm-hmm. But in 2001, we sold this business, which was the largest multimodal operator in the Baltimore-Washington region. We sold it to what was then Vivendi. It became Veolia and then merged with Transdev. And we were the platform for the development in the U.S. We grew it up from basically in 2002, $50 million in revenue to by 2008, $1 billion, and by 2012, $1.5 billion. So we had some pretty phenomenal growth and operate 3 primary businesses. We operate a large transit business that operates big transit contracts throughout the country, throughout North America. And then we operate a rail business running both some heavier rail and streetcar, lots of streetcar systems throughout the country. And then we have an on-demand and business-to-business business, both business-to-business and business-to-consumer, running a lot of those tech buses in the Bay Area, and we run Super Shuttle in 40 airports, and so we have a big consumer business.
And your background was you've been CEO of, so let's see, I think I started working for you in 94, 95. No, it was later. It was like 97, 98, because I'd worked for Mayflower Laidlaw a little bit and you recruited me on that. I always tell the story. Mark was trying to recruit me for 6 months to come help take Yellow National. And so he finally said to me, Paul, write down, do you remember this? He said, write down what you'd want in a dream job. And finally I said, well, okay, I'll write it down. So I wrote down like 10 things, I want, vice president title, blah, blah. And he said, I'll give it all to you. I said, well, if you're not going to take it when somebody offers it to you, you got to be crazy. And it was a great experience helping to work with you during that time. So you had this taxi company and you've kind of always been in charge. And then when you sold to the French, how did you end up being in charge of it all? I mean, normally they would bring their own guy over, I guess, but you ended up, they must have respected you enough to put you in charge.
Paul, I lectured at Wharton Business School. I never went to business school, but I lectured at Wharton and at Harvard and some other business schools. And what I learned was that in growing this business and developing this business, that first that we were an unlikely platform because we were very diversified in one major market. Mm-hmm. Rather than having a single focus in many markets, so that we didn't have the geographic coverage, but we had the team that could expand and could grow the business. And in the first 3 years, we had doubled our own business through what was Yellow. And the key was both having great relationships with our customers, long-term relationships with our customers, good relationships with the city and the community, and having great people. And we were able to find talent like you and others, some who came from the public sector, a number who came from the private sector, and that could help us to achieve that kind of phenomenal growth.
I've always been impressed about your loyalty to your people. I mean, this 25 years later, you've still got people like, Terry Oates and, Dwight Kynes and these other guys who have worked with you the whole time, and they've remained loyal to you. You've been loyal to them. And I think building your business on the back of relationships is big and probably the reason for Transdev's success. I mean, aren't you the biggest in North America?
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
And Paul, and I think one of the key messages is we think of sustainability today as both environmental but also longevity. Less than 1% of all companies survive 50 years. And to have survived 100 years is a remarkable thing. And that means having deep roots in the community. So we were able then to diversify our business by having that kind of relationships in the community. And by diversifying the business, it gave us staying power. If we lost a contract, if we lost a bid, we still had other businesses. We still could be a player in the community. We could still help solve problems for the community. And that becomes increasingly important because the problems of cities are very similar. We see a large, thankfully, migration back into cities. We see the growth in cities, but we see congestion, we see pollution, we see other issues around navigating your way around the city. And so, and as far as the people go, the biggest challenge has been, as you grow, to identify where they can grow and be developed, and not to extend them beyond their if they're struggling, to find a place where they can be in their wheelhouse and be productive, but also find the talent that can take the business to the next level.
That's good. So Transdev North America is part of a larger international company, right? Tell us a little about that. I mean, you talk about the innovations you're bringing to cities. A lot of that's coming from what you're doing around the world. Tell us about your larger parent company.
Right. So we are the most multimodal and most international. We're running large trains, large rail operations, like in Germany, where we're number 2 to Deutsche Bahn, the state-owned railroad.
Okay.
We're running some metro systems. We run metro in Mumbai that is a small line but carries 300,000 people a day. We run part of the metro in Seoul, Korea, line number 9. So we have a lot of experience on rail systems. We run the oldest streetcar system in China, which is in Hong Kong, which is over 100 years old, the double-decker streetcar.
Oh, yeah.
And we run the oldest in America, which is the one in New Orleans. And we are uniquely positioned because we are the only one to be a public transit authority in New Orleans, Nassau County. So we understand what it's like to be in the shoes of a transit agency and to be faced with the impending disruption and change that they're going to see. We saw it in our taxi and shuttle businesses, but now it's moving towards transit, and so there's a lot of change there. So we're in 19 countries around the world, the most international and the most multimodal.
83,000 employees?
Yes.
And how much money a year?
About $8 billion in revenue.
Now here in the U.S., where Transdev is, you're the largest, right, by revenue of
Yes.
the contract providers.
Yeah.
Tell us about that market.
In the transit, the combined transit rail, we're the largest. We're not in the school bus business, so if you look at school bus, there are others who are larger. The market is about 25% private, 75% publicly operated.
Okay.
So our strategy has always been to compete for share shift of what is already private with our main competitors, and to be the high value, the best value provider, the most safe, best maintenance, best reputation for delivering what we say we're gonna. We do what we say we're gonna do. And at the same time, to look to see if some of these agencies will consider partnering and converting from public to private operation. And we see some interest in that increasingly, especially when you see what change is coming with operators who will move into the space, because it was easy to disrupt the taxi industry. But next will be disruption, I think, of transit.
Yeah, I just read an article about a company which I know you know about called Bridge, and how they didn't really make it in Boston, but now they've gone to Australia, and they're using big data and people, just what you were talking about at the conference today, their own people's phone to figure out, do algorithms, and they're competing against public transit. So let's talk about that, and maybe we could use as a way to talk through it, Transdev's vision, the PACE thing. Why don't you tell us about that, and then what you see coming in the future in each of those areas?
Okay. So first of all, PACE is personalized, autonomous, connected, and electric. And people talk about what's the killer app. The killer app in transportation is shared autonomous electric vehicles. Electric vehicles have been getting some gains in terms of market share in the U.S., but it's still a very, very small penetration of the automobile industry in electric, even if the major auto manufacturers have committed to a much more significant number of those vehicles being electric, because even with the subsidies, the return on investment takes a long time versus where fuel costs are today. However, when you marry up autonomous vehicles that are shared in a commercial system, and you look at the trip volume, because the typical car owner only uses their car 5% of the day, maximum 10% of the day, even in the peak. The peak usage of personal cars is about 12%, but the total usage is somewhere around 5%, which means to get a return on an electric vehicle takes a long time. If you look at a commercial vehicle, taking a personalized, autonomous, connected electric vehicle and putting that into a shared environment, that return can be as short as 1 year on an electric vehicle, the return on investment. That's the first point.
Okay.
Second is, if you look at personalized, we are getting big data. What you just spoke about is that we can learn a lot about what people's preferences are for where they go, where they come from, where they go. Google knows where you work, even if you haven't told them.
Right.
Facebook knows where you work because you have told them. In the case of Google, they know it because they know when you're traveling, they know there's a pattern where you leave your home every day at a certain time and you arrive at a certain destination every day, 5 days a week, and they assume and they can figure out that that's your work, and you have the reverse of that at the end of the day, and they know those two location points are home and office. The point is that once you have this data on consumers and you know what their preferences are, you can tailor services to them. Just as Amazon tells you, well, you've just read a mystery book, would you like to read this one? What will happen in terms of big data is to say, you travel this pattern, today that route is congested, would you like an alternative solution for that? And here's how to get there. So personalized aspect. The autonomous is just what we've been talking about. There'll be autonomous vehicles that will be, I think that the big question people ask is when?
Right.
When are they going to happen?
Right.
Well, technologically, they're ready to go this year. So you can start to see autonomous vehicles that are largely ready to be level 5 autonomous, full autonomy this year.
I rode your vehicle 2 weeks ago in Atlanta.
And
it was phenomenal. I put up a video, and it was a great experience, safe. Now, it didn't go very fast.
Right.
So tell us about that. You were talking out there, first closed campuses, and I know you and I were talking at one point about trying to do one here in Maryland that we never got to do. But, so tell us about that.
Well, it's easy. The biggest challenge for autonomous vehicles are two things. One is the hardware, the LiDAR and other sensor systems, and how those sensor systems avoid accidents, and the second is the software. It is the ultimate case of artificial intelligence, of machine learning, because drivers have to solve problems instantaneously that when you put it through a computer could be challenging. For instance, one of the key challenges for autonomous vehicles is a 4-way stop sign. At a 4-way stop sign, you see another car, you approach, you know who was first, who was second. You can communicate with the other driver by looking at the other driver and motioning, and you proceed. The autonomous vehicle has to solve that problem. That's an example where the machine learning and the folks at Waymo, which is owned by Google, have solved that problem through showing intention. And their goal, actually, each one of these companies that's building autonomous vehicles, whether it's Ford, whether it's GM or others, Tesla, each one has a little bit different approach. But Waymo, Google's approach is to build the perfect driver. So technology's getting there, the hardware and the software, to have vehicles that can navigate safely. In terms of adoption, the first place to see rapid adoption is closed campuses or city corridors where these vehicles can operate on their own and not interact with driver vehicles.
And that's what's happening right now.
And that's what's
right?
happening already. Yeah. So we're seeing a nuclear campus in France where we operate. We see a private road network in the Netherlands where we operate. And we see some campuses in the U.S. and some cities. They're saying we're going to devote a particular area downtown, a core area that will have an autonomous service. We see use cases like convention centers or others for shuttles. But to have full on the road, open road autonomy is the next thing. And I believe we're only a year or two away from that. Part of it is the safety regulations. Part of it is the early experience and the confidence with this. And part of it is weather. Because the places that you'll see this kind of rapid adoption are places like Phoenix or other warm weather places, because they still depend on road lane markings, and places where they get snow will have to take a longer time for that.
Yeah. So that's personalized, autonomous,
right,
and then connected.
So,
a lot of that it's going to lead to connected, right?
Right. So the interesting thing, if you're willing to give up your car, or thinking about giving up your car, and by the way, I think there's going to be a world where you might own an autonomous vehicle just like you might own a condo, and you might put your condo in timeshare and let other people use it, and you might put your autonomous vehicle into a shared network of autonomous vehicles. But the connectivity is first of all, the connectivity is vehicle to vehicle. So there's the idea that a vehicle will be able to communicate that it's making a right turn from the left lane, and the other vehicles will know this, and that and this way you can maximize road networks in terms of reducing congestion. You know how when you're driving on the highway and one car slows down, and then for the next 10 miles,
right,
everybody slows down.
Happened to me today. Yeah.
Well, in the case of when these vehicles can talk to each other, they're going to travel at speed, and they're going to know, and you're going to be able to reduce these kind of problems that will increase throughput, which will be a significant advantage. So you have vehicle-to-vehicle connectivity. You also have vehicle-to-person connectivity. The connectivity to connect, to book the vehicle, to serve the vehicle. And Transdev's role in all of this is we're an operator. So we're interested in the control center. We're interested in the dispatch of the vehicle. We're interested in the human interface between getting on and off the vehicle and making sure it's a safe and great experience. So that's another example of the connectivity.
So you've got personalized, autonomous, connected, and then electric. All of them pulled together. That's the future you see?
That's the pace of change, and that's what we're trying to do, and we're doing it both in terms of our own innovation and piloting, and working with partners who are leaders in the space, whether it's the auto manufacturers, auto suppliers, and partners like transit agencies, to say, how can we be agile? How can we move quickly? How can we do a pilot? How can we try a MVP, a minimal viable product, and test things that will give the agencies a role in the future, and not be disrupted by others who will innovate. A big change in this is going to be that, as you know from running a large transit system, is that half your cost is labor, and so it's going to change the way we look at, and we have to work with our drivers, because we believe totally that even in an autonomous world, we value human capital. And so we just think that the labor will be redirected into other areas that where there will be special needs and other areas of where we can improve service.
I think a good example of that, some people are concerned, unions might be concerned that they're going to lose their job, but all over America and the world, there are autonomous trains
Right.
that don't need people.
Right.
And so the conductors of those trains have now become kind of ambassadors on the platforms
Right.
in many places, and they're giving much better customer service
Right.
to the people who are trying to ride, because now there's, you have enough money to pay people to actually interact with other people instead of stay locked away in the front of the train.
Right. So for sure, this is a challenge, and we've heard a lot of statistics with regard to how many driving positions there are in America. We see drones could potentially be doing deliveries.
Mm-hmm.
We see these autonomous vehicles operating. So we have to think about how we're going to retrain and repurpose the driver. But we do think there are important roles for those drivers. We have an aging population in the U.S. We have healthcare that has become more outpatient oriented, and we can see retraining drivers for special needs and for other things that where an autonomous vehicle just is not going to be able to solve the problem.
It's interesting, all the innovations we're talking about. I think that transportation, other than the medical field, will probably have the most innovation out of any industry over the next 10 years. It's an exciting time to be here. And your job is really to lead innovation for the largest transportation company in the world. It's pretty awesome.
Well,
so what do you do? I mean, what's your job? What do you do every day? You're traveling around the world looking at cool things like Bogota, Colombia, where they're doing a BRT that serves 2 million people a day with 30-second headways like you were talking. I mean, what are you doing?
Paul, first of all, my job is development and as chief development officer to look at opportunities to grow our business. Mm-hmm. And I agree with you that in the more than 30 years I've been in the business, there's never been a more exciting time to be in the transportation business. When I started in the business, there was a TV show called Taxi that was on.
Yeah.
And people used to look at the taxi business or the transportation business as not being very glamorous or sexy. Today, people are leaving the best business schools and engineering schools and looking to get in transportation because we're on the forefront of this change that you're talking about. So our job is to find where the white space is, where the pain points are, where the problems are that still need to be solved. Where are those emerging opportunities? We see that there are still great inefficiencies in the service. You were an innovator at MTA in terms of thinking about how you could improve and redesign the service. And we're thinking about how we can help agencies. I think the typical transit agency has probably 20% of the routes that are inefficient, and there are better ways to provide service. So we're looking around the world, whether it's in Bogota, and looking at what a true bus rapid transit can do in changing the city. That, more than anything, changed the city in
Talk
Bogota.
about that a little bit. That's a very interesting story.
For a city with 8 billion people.
8 million?
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
8 million people. A city with 8 million people that had serious challenges, both financially and so economically, financially, and from a geographic congestion and other challenges, and they didn't have the ability to build a metro system. They did have the political will to dedicate a huge corridor across the city to put dedicated lanes to build a rubber-tired, what in essence is a rubber-tired metro system, and to have enough capacity on that system with buses that literally are, we call it headways, you know it well, when the time between the first bus and the second bus at the same location or point. And these headways are as little as 30 seconds. So these vehicles are essentially traveling in convoys and literally moving the city of Bogota. With 8 million population, we're transporting with our co-operators 2 million of the people, so 25% of the population a day ride the Transmilenio. And the ride times are a third of what they would be if they were trying to fight traffic in their personal car.
That's something. So what else are you seeing coming? I mean, I was talking with my CEO of my new company. Mark Miller is his name, about Bitcoin and its role coming in transit, and yesterday I was at a meeting in DC talking about, blockchain technology and how that might, what else do you see coming in the future from your role kind of at the top of the mountain, looking forward into what's coming to the rest of the industry?
Well, for sure, this idea of big data and whether it's, blockchain, how you manage this data, and how you protect the data, how you make sure it's safe and secure, and what type of currencies you use for payment are all areas that I think are emerging and can change, so you can make it seamless, so you can make transportation seamless. Why do you need one fare card for the bus? Why do you need to pay on a bike share with a different card? Why Uber pay with a credit card? Everyone differently. But the change, I think, is that there's still a lot of silos. The data is in silos. Uber owns their own data. Lyft owns their own data. The Transit Administration might have some of their data that they own. Some of it's open. So the data is in silos. And that could change for the betterment of society by having the ability to at least access in some kind of a mass approach, which is mobility as a service, which would improve the predictability, the reliability, and the ease of transportation for the individual. But that means people playing in the same sandbox together. And whether government chooses to force that or whether this could happen organically is uncertain. But there are opportunities to help folks to have a true transportation option, which is a bundled service, like you now have your cable that has your phone, it has your internet, it has your entertainment, all bundled, all subscription. And I can see the day when your transportation in the city is bundled in a subscription where it's $200 a month, and all your services are covered, and you don't have to worry. You can navigate, you can worry about navigation, you can worry about options, but you know how to budget it, you know how to manage it. Employers know how to do it, building owners know how to do it, and individuals know how to do it.
Wow, that's phenomenal. I've never heard anybody say that before. So you could have a subscription where you could go and get your zip car if you needed it, ride transit, do the bike, ride the subway.
Right, and so, Amazon had a breakthrough with Prime, which was, what was the pain point that caused people not to shop on a daily basis? They would buy occasionally, but the friction was the shipping.
Right.
And once they decided that they could take that friction out and take away the objection to buying small items, and you had a subscription for the shipping, then you started to open up the doors, the floodgates to buying your shaving cream or whatever, small items there. I think once the model changes in terms of how it's bundled, how the offering is created, and how it's priced, people will use more of this kind of public transportation because they'll have access and they'll have predictability on the spend.
Our mutual friend, Nat Ford, who's the new chairman of APTA, is big on talking about us changing the terminology from transit to mobility. It's really what you're talking about, isn't it? That we're not just in the transit business, we're now in the business of mobility.
Yes, yeah, and I think that our goal, and we're solving this question of why, why are we in business? What are we trying to do? And really what we're trying to do at Transdev is empower people to have the freedom to move, that people should have choices, whether they're people with disabilities, whether they're people who have a lower income, whether they're children, students, or whether they're aging population. People should have choices, and this mobility that you and Nat and others are speaking about is helping to make that second nature, to give them the tools to make that mobility second nature, and at the same time improve the quality of life in cities by making the movement, by reducing traffic, by reducing pollution, and improving the environment. We can do that.
That's been Mark Joseph, Global Chief Development Officer of Transdev, the largest transit contract provider in North America. And Mark, it's been a pleasure to have you with us. It's great to have a fellow Marylander helping lead the world in what's happening in the transit industry. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Paul, I feel the same about you. Thanks very much for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for being with us today on Transit Unplugged, where we look to the future of what's coming in our transit world. I'm Paul Comfort. Talk to you next time on Transit Unplugged.
You've been listening to Transit Unplugged, powered by Trapeze Group. To stay up to date, subscribe on iTunes or Google Play, or join the conversation at transitunplugged.com. Thanks for listening.